Hi everyone, I'm Katie and I am from the Panhandle of Florida. Please excuse the crazy sunburn on my face. I just got back from a 13-hour trip to Arkansas where I watched Alabama and Arkansas play football this past weekend, Roll Tide. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I'm going to jump right into my chapter on telephony, which was chapter 20. This was a very interesting chapter, but it was a chapter filled with a lot of statistics and numbers, and so I'm going to try my best not to bore you with the number side of things, and kind of just present some history and kind of the evolution of where we've gone with telephony. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right in and get started. The first thing I want to talk about is what exactly is telephony. Well, our book defines it as something that conveys voice and data between distant places by wired or wireless channels. So what does that look like for us today? Well, today that would be our smartphones, like what I'm using to record this presentation. Our smartphones nowadays meet almost every communicational need that we have. We can text, we can make phone calls, we can check our bank accounts, we can book an Uber, we can do job searches, all kinds of different things with our phone. So some background on telephony. AT&T was born on March 3rd, 1885. Theodore Vail actually served as the president for AT&T twice, once in 1888 and then again in 1907 through 1919. Theodore Vail had a dream of building AT&T into a centralized monopoly, and he actually accomplished this goal by buying out smaller businesses and creating the transcontinental phone line in 1915. As technology has advanced, traditional telephony became known as POTS, which stands for, plain old telephone service. Which would circulate human voices via copper wires that connected to an analog exchange center. Over the next 100 years, telephony evolved through digital processing and the switching of telephone numbers converted to computer memory, known as the storage program control. Throughout all of this became the birth of mobile phones. So Thomas Carter introduced his two-way radio phone attachment in 1955, and he did this so that ranchers and oil workers could communicate over distances using AT&T phones and lines. The homemade Carter phone sold about 3,500 initially, and quickly thereafter AT&T demanded that the FCC actually put a stop to the production, and so later there was a Supreme Court ruling that actually came out in favor of the Carter phone. Continuing on, Martin Cooper liked the communicator that he saw in Star Trek. If anybody is a Trekkie out there, I'm not, but more power to you. And he kind of took that vision and he created a portable phone in 1973, and he actually began selling these on the streets of Manhattan. So moving forward in the progression of telephony is smartphones evolution. And the smartphone evolution actually began the year that I was born in 1993 with the introduction of the IBM Simon, and it has continued to evolve over time. The smartphone is actually a stack of 4 technical layers. The first layer is actually the app itself. The second layer is the operating system. The third layer is the smartphone. And then the fourth layer is the cellular network. The book talks a little bit about BlackBerry to iPhone. I can remember my very first smartphone was actually a BlackBerry. Blackberries were very popular, especially among celebrities. However, in 2014, their fortunes had actually began to take quarterly losses, coming close to $1 billion. Apple's first iPhone actually went on sale in 2007 at a rate of $499. And seeing as where the iPhone rate is now, that seems very cheap and very reasonable, especially now that they're up to around 1,000 or more. I'm not an iPhone user, so I don't have a lot of personal experience with that. That's a long way away from the prices that we see today, though. I do know that. There have been lots of recent developments in telephony. Most recent developments since 2014 are the ones that our books talks about, and it talks primarily about different apps that we utilize. It talks a lot about Apple Pay, which was introduced in 2014, and it kind of set forth this concept that's taken off since then. Now there's Google Pay and so many others. It talks about how different companies have seen an increase in how people use Apple Pay to pay for certain things like their food at McDonald's or different things from stores. There are also mobile watches now, like the Apple Watch, that you can use that basically acts as a cell phone on your wrist. There are several popular apps that our book talks about that have developed in the last several years. The most popular in this order were Facebook Messenger, YouTube, the Google apps, Google Play, Google Maps, Google Search, Gmail. And then there were also some popular music apps that many of us probably use, like Pandora and Apple Music, that topped that list as well. We also use our smartphones for things like following the news, GPS mapping. I just went on a 13-hour trip to Arkansas. I used my Google Maps the whole way there. We also use it to share videos and photos with people, different things like that. The current status of telephony is kind of mind-boggling whenever you look at the actual numbers. Our book talks about how in plain numbers, 33 million people had subscriptions to a mobile phone in 1995. In 2015, that number topped at 355 million. Analysts have predicted that by 2020, we will see 2 billion smartphone connections. Measured by global handset sales in 2015, Samsung actually led the race with 22.5%, and Apple followed at 15.9%. One of the reasons that, the federal government really likes to have a plethora of options as far as service plans go is because in the cellular industry of the U.S., it constrains consumer cost. And so just some information to back that up. In 2014, the data showed that the average plan for a smartphone contract was $1,050 for a year, and most contracts are signed off for a 2-year period. T-Mobile actually came in at the cheapest with $120 a month, and Verizon topped the list as the most expensive for $148 a month. In today's world, the majority of people have completely discontinued their landlines and are solely cellular users. While I've provided a ton of information and a ton of numbers, I'm already at 7 minutes, and so I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do want to end on just my own personal preferences and then also ask you a question. So I personally am a Verizon user, even though I know that Verizon is more expensive than the other cellular plans. It has proven to me to be the one with the best service. I always have service when other people don't. I'm one of the only people at my job who actually has service in the building. Everybody else has AT&T and they never have service, so I feel like it's worth the money. I'm also a Samsung user. I tried iPhone once and it wasn't really for me. I didn't really care for it. I love my Samsung though. I've had this same phone for about 3 years now and I love it. So I guess my question to you, or questions, is, what service do you use? What kind of phone do you prefer? Do you prefer Apple? Do you prefer Samsung or something else? There are lots of options out there today. And are there any updates or further advancements that you would like to see from your smartphone in the near future, that you would like to see developers make for smartphones in the future? Thank you guys so much for listening. I look forward to reading your responses, and I have really enjoyed this semester and learning from each of you and answering your questions, and now I look forward to you answering mine. Have a great night.